Hello, everyone. Someone requested that I do an update for new viewers about all the books that I have available, that I talk about some of my older books, and that I may read some passages from some of them. So I thought I would go in order and do that. I will show you my entire oeuvre, so to speak, and starting with my oldest book, Dark Tales of Mystery and Crime, which Dark Tales was a book that I wrote way back in 2015 when I was very interested in film noir, and I still am to a degree, but I'm not as passionate about it as I once was. Therefore, it has a very bare bones, laid back kind of style. And I wrote a lot of short stories at the time, um, with an idea of doing what you might call a twist at the end of every short story, and I posted them online, and I got a lot of feedback on them, and so I collected all of these stories into this collection, Dark Tales of Mystery and Crime. And but again, Dark Tales is a very bare bones kind of approach. It's very minimalist. I hadn't quite reached my poetic phase yet. Therefore, this book is written very differently than my subsequent books. And therefore, I'm not really all that proud of it, even though it is the only book of mine that's in the library, my local library, mainly because the librarian just saw it when my father was talking about it online randomly and purchased it. But I wouldn't say I'm too proud of this one. This is the only book actually that I haven't backed up properly. It's still on my old computer. I probably need to retrieve it sometime, but because I'm not that proud of it, I haven't really gotten around to doing it. And and it's also the only book of mine that isn't available digitally. You can only get it in paperback form. And but Now it would take forever for me to actually find my favorite passages, so I thought I would just read you the opening paragraph of every book that I talk about. So the first story in this collection is Underneath the Surface, and so I'll read the opening paragraph of that. Day by day, week after week, the hole grew bigger and bigger. Lewis continued to excavate, mostly unaware of what was going on around him. The day before, he had stopped going to work, to the surprise of his friends and neighbors. Was he burying a body, like so many people suspected, or was it something far more sinister? One thing was for certain: there was a method to his madness. And as you can see, it's a very this is a very uh, bare bones minimalist approach. There's about, I think, 39 short stories in there, in all. And that cover actually was taken, I think, in the back alleyway in my hometown. Actually, I think the only alleyway there, I believe. So now I will move on to what I consider my more serious work. Next is The Rains of Godwin Valley, which is a Western book. Um, I'll just read you all of the summaries on the back, where this one is in the middle of the Old West, a small town is struggling to find water. 18 years earlier, one of the villagers, a man by the name of James, impregnated Joanna, a local prostitute. When the town discovered the truth, they kicked her out of the community. Many years later, Joanna returns, determined to get revenge. With the local sheriff seemingly secretly helping her, Joanna plans to destroy the morality of the town, namely by taking the one thing they need to survive: water. Now, The Rains of Galwin Valley is not linked with my other books. It is because I published it under Joseph Loxton, not under Joseph Vance Loxton, and therefore, if you click on the links, you won't find this. So, if you want to find this book, I probably need to consolidate them sometime, but it's very difficult. You will have to type in Joseph Loxton, The Rains of Galwin Valley, if you would like to purchase this book. And The Rains of Galwin Valley, though, was came about because what I really wanted to do is that I wanted to kind of do a challenge to libertarianism, which is essentially well, if an entire town, like if an entire town was deprived of water, but it was private property, would the town be justified in initiating force, even though technically they would be violating, they would be stealing, they would be violating private property rights, even though technically the person who has the water hasn't done anything directly to them. It's purely about survival. And now The writing in this is still a little rough around the edges, um, but it is, I think, the first time that I started to dabble poetically um, within within my writing. That I started to write in a poetic, lyrical style. Therefore, I thought I would read to you the opening passage of The Rains of Godwin Valley. James stared into the sky, temporarily blinded by the powerful sunlight, its intensity being almost too much to bear. All around him, both left and right, there was a sense of impending doom. With every step, every gesture, every breath, the heat became more forceful, eventually to the point of pure exhaustion, during which he experienced many different emotions, some quite dangerous, just such as the feeling of intense anger towards society. The more he walked, the more fatigued he became, and the more fatigued he became, the more he wished for death. James desired to provide for his family, but given the current economic climate, all hope seemed to be lost, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, as you can tell, I'm already getting still a little rough there, but I'm still already getting a little more detailed, a little more complicated in my descriptions, and therefore I don't really consider really the beginning of how I write now to have started until I wrote The Rains of Galwin Valley um, in um, in 2018. Well, I wrote in 2017, published it in 2018, and unfortunately, it got a lot of bad reviews because I ended up posting it on Reddit. And some of you might know Reddit is not the best place to. I didn't post it on Reddit. I started advertising it on Reddit. But as some of you might know, Reddit is not the best place to try to get reviews, and therefore I got a lot of troll reviews on it. Most of whom hadn't actually read the book, and so that's unfortunate. But again, if you want to find this, it's not linked with my other books. You're going to have to search for it, The Rains of Galwin Valley. Now we get to Empty Sounds of the Wind, um, which is my shortest book. It's only a little novella. I mean, a little novelette. Technically, it's a pamphlet. Um, and this book is essentially, I'll read to you its summary. After fighting in the Second World War, Edmund O'Neill returns home, desperate to reconcile with his father, a man of 80 who has become an invalid. In the process, he will discover a dreadful secret, one that will tear his sanity apart. Um, yes, this is where I kind of mix gothic narratives with film noir. You know, it's about Edmund who comes home, and then his father's elderly after World War II, but he suspects that he may have a relationship with his fiance that he doesn't quite know about, that something may have been going on between them while they were gone, and he's also in bandages, and it's almost a Phantom of the Opera type thing in some instances. Um, this book, the entire thing takes place in one night, but this book is popular because it's short. You can read it in an hour, and it has a lot of emotional resonance. And it takes place by this cover, I believe, was taken um, by in Minnesota at this lighthouse, and it has a lot of atmosphere in that regard. And I really think my description starts to come to life here. So I'll read to you the opening passage of Empty Sounds of the Wind. Edmund stood upon the edge of the cliff, not even half the man that he had been before. The pain circulated into his feet, through his hands, eventually reaching his face, where it finally subsided. Though he attempted to suppress it, a slight moan managed to escape his lips, causing him even more pain. He stared into the water below, conscious of nothing but his own despair. Within the dark depths of the water, he saw the faces of his fellow soldiers, all of whom had perished during combat. Their eyes were blank, expressionless, and without concern. They tried to speak, but their mouths released only air. And so, as you can see here, Edmund is dealing with a lot of post traumatic stress disorder. Some people actually thought I had studied post traumatic stress disorder in writing Empty Sounds of the Wind, but I didn't. It was purely just my imagination. And this one was actually one of the most popular stories when I posted it on Booksy a long time ago. And so, yeah, it's a very short psychological drama, Empty Sounds of the Wind. Now we get to Symphony of Perdition, which is also another little novella. And I'll read to you its summary. Told through a series of flashbacks, Symphony of Perdition explores the emotional journey of Sam, a poor and down to earth farmer who attempts to save his wife from her depression. Along the way, he will have to confront her intrusive father, someone who will stop at nothing to end the suffering of his daughter. And so, Symphony of Perdition is a very powerful book because it's essentially about a psychiatrist oh, no, I mean, at first it's about a farmer and his wife, and how his wife is suffering from mental illness, depression. So he calls her father to see what is wrong, and he's a psychiatrist. But then the father has some very dark ideas about what is wrong with her, and thinks that her suffering is inevitable and can't be cured. And that leads to a lot of dark instances. It's a very intense, almost Tennessee Williams um, type of drama. And so I will read to you the opening passage of it. Sam stared at his wife's grave, clueless as to what to do with his life. For the entire evening he had been pacing between multiple tombstones, the expression on his face too grim to describe accurately. The air was cold, thick, and almost entirely devoid of spirituality. The frosty atmosphere, combined with the cumbersome darkness, brought a great amount of agony to his body. His left hand, once considered to be capable and sturdy, vibrated with a great amount of intensity. Slowly, gently, and calmly, Sam's muscles forced his hand to edge towards the grave. The more Sam's hand drifted towards the stone, the more his line of focus seemed to linger behind it, ever so gently journeying towards the frigid structure, an all too familiar place of despair in which only painful recollections resided. If I touched the screen there, it was because the phone went to 20% power, and therefore I had to tap it. But anyway, um, Symphony of Perdition is a very powerful, one could even say, Tennessee Williams like drama, and it it's one of my books that sells the least. Um, but I think, and I don't know why. I think it's because it's really hard to place genre wise. It's somewhat of a thriller, somewhat of a drama, and this was the last book actually that I wrote in my house, in my older house before I moved here. And so it had this the photo, the cover was taken at the local cemetery where my grandparents are buried. Um, and so, yeah, Symphony of Perdition is, I think, probably my most underrated book. So now we move on to Mournful Wanderer, my gothic horror novel, and I'll read to you the summary of it. Set during the Civil War, Mournful Wanderer explores the emotional trials of Alice Bloomington, a grieving widow and mother who attempts to contact the spirit of her dead son. In attempting to do so, she will seek out the assistance of her family doctor, a man with questionable motivations. And this is an intense psychological drama where you have the character of Alice, who is a Southern belle, who thinks she's being haunted by the ghost of her dead son, who you can see here, and but she thinks she might be manipulated by her doctor, who's trying to get his hands on her money, and so it's ambiguous. And this um, photo was actually taken at Land Between the Lakes, where I saw the figure of a baby in a tree, and I came up with the idea for Mournful Wanderer based on that picture. So this is a real picture of a baby doll, not a real baby, a baby doll that someone just left behind, and and from that I came up with Mournful Wanderer. It's a very gothic type story, inspired heavily by Turning of the Screw, and it's only 6 chapters, but but the chapters are very long. Some of them are around 5,000 to 6,000 words, and so this book doesn't rely a lot on dialogue. It's highly atmospheric and highly inspired by Gothic literature. I'll read to you the opening of it. Even in mourning, Alice Bloomington remained tranquil, almost as though she somehow suspected that her son hadn't truly perished from the world. Most astonishingly, her gaze stayed linear, focused, and without tension. Laden with regret, Alice was perfectly motionless, never even once swaying her legs. The tender sentiments of grief, although quite potent, only loosely entered her heart. They violently attacked her resilient nature, occasionally even penetrating it, but she always managed to repel them, albeit only momentarily. She grasped her diary in her hands, gently stroking its soft edges. Leisurely tilting her head, Alice's eyes drifted towards her pale fingertips. Her moist palms firmly attached themselves to the withered pages, the pressure steadily increasing. Caught between states of vitality and fragility, her lips quivered as she turned the pages, directly above which emerged the soft creases within her jawline. So as you can see here, I'm becoming very descriptive in my descriptions. When I say things like directly above which emerge the soft creases within her jawline, I'm really starting to become descriptive in the physical, human sense, where I'm describing things like texture and skin. And so this is an evolution in my writing. I wrote this during I think the pandemic of 2020. And so, yeah, you should definitely try to check out my book, Mournful Wanderer. And now we move on to Silent Reckoning. Um, which is my book that was inspired and based partially on The Great Gatsby. And as you can see with the cover here, and I think Silent Reckoning is my first truly great book. A lot of these others I would say have flaws, but it's my first full length novel, and I would say it's my because my it's my first truly great book. I wrote it here on this typewriter that this phone is actually sitting on from 1922, the first draft, and I think writing it on a typewriter and not on the computer. This is the first book where I did that. Really helped me, um, and so it really helped me get the language out. It really refined it because I really had to think about what I was saying because I didn't have any second chances. And so I'll read to you the description of Silent Reckoning, the blurb. In the end, we are merely the clay that time uses to sculpt its wonders, Jeannie said. This is a quote from Jeannie Anderson, the main character of the story. Set in 1929, Silent Reckoning explores the trials and tribulations of Jeannie Anderson, an aging actress who desires to reinvigorate her dwindling career. Obsessed and beguiled by Jeannie's elegance, Walter Peterson, a lonely factory worker, seeks to assist the thespian in her lofty aspirations. They will be plunged into a world of corruption and vice, through which they will become privy to the ghosts of disillusioned dreams. And of course, I wrote this in 2021 and part of 2022. Um, Again, heavily inspired by The Great Gatsby. It's about an actress named Jeannie Anderson who is highly ambitious, even though she's a silent movie actress. Her career is fading. Um, she was in Hollywood, but she returned to New York City briefly to bury her mother. And then she is there's a character named Walter Peterson who is a great fan of Jeannie Anderson, and he wants to help revitalize her career. So he seduces her, so to speak, into a plot to blackmail this other actress, a younger rival actress named Ursula Chapman, and and they get the assistance of this film critic who is going to help them. But then he ends up turning out to have a past with Jeannie Anderson that completely ultimately shatters her, a past that Walter Peterson does not know about, and it all ends in this climactic scene in Central Park, um, where in the snow where the characters finally come together and all is revealed. Um, it's a really dramatic human tragedy where the pressures and forces around her completely destroy Jeannie Anderson, and the silent reckoning is the symbol for the reckoning within our psychology. It's silent, but it's there. That's what the term silent reckoning means. And of course, as you see here, I think this is probably the best cover that I've done. It's a beautiful cover with and my dad uh, designed, and you can see the carnival in the background and the picture of New York City in the background. So yes, definitely check out Silent Reckoning. I think this is my first truly great book, and of course I'll read to you the opening paragraph of it. Chapter one, the confession, part one. Before I was even a whisper in my mother's thoughts, It seemed as if the world had already forgotten me. I was born on August 25th, 1893. The world was completely different then. I still recall the echoes of the horses in the streets, the gallant way in which they trotted along the pavements. The air was clean, almost unnaturally so, and there seemed to be a radiant innocence to almost everything. The clouds in the sky, possibly in response to the purities in our hearts, were enchantingly serene. On and on the days shimmered, never once beholden to the shadows of midnight. All day long I heard soft piano music. The sunlight orchestrated the euphoric melodies, intensifying their auspicious cadences. There was no pain, there was no heartbreak. Whatever darkness existed, whatever melancholy drifted through my frivolous gestures, was ultimately drowned out by the hymns of morning. And so I think that paragraph is highly sophisticated, which is one of the reasons why, because you can hear her recount the her own senses. You can hear and feel and see the horses in the streets, her recalling the past. It's one of my I think first truly great paragraphs where I don't really see any flaws in it whatsoever. And that's one of the reasons why I think Silent Reckoning is again one of my greatest works. It's my first truly great book, in my estimation. Then, of course, we get to my most recent book, which I'm sure all of you have heard about a lot. Um, the Ecstasy and the Ignominy. Of course, this is a beat up paperback because I've used it a whole lot to read from, and of course, I'll read to you the blurb of it. Set in the 19th century, The Ecstasy and the Ignominy explores the agonies and tribulations of the people of Harrisville, an industrial town on the brink of revolution. Catherine Harris, the wife of a wealthy industrialist, is tempted by the sympathy of Edward Compton, a man disillusioned by life. Their forbidden passion unfolds against the backdrop of a tumultuous insurrection, testing loyalties and breaking alliances. Now, this is, I think, my magnum opus. It's the book that if I had to die now, knock on wood, hopefully I would be remembered for. Hopefully I don't die now. I would love to finish The Disappearance of Richard Blackwood, but and many other books to come. But this is a legacy book. It's the book that I put a lot of effort into, a lot of energy into, a lot of fierce energy. Um, it is essentially about, again, the plot of the Ecstasy and the Ignominy, and the Ignominy is very complex. It is about the town of Harrisville in the 19th century, during the Industrial Revolution. It's set probably somewhere in America, but I'm not sure exactly where. It has mountains, and snowy mountains, and it's next to the sea. This town, and it's a very striking image. In some ways, it looks more like Norway than America. Um, if it were to be filmed somewhere as a movie, it would probably have to be filmed in Norway or perhaps New Zealand, because I was highly inspired by the work of Heinrich Ibsen before I wrote this, about the idea of morality, of women, especially in circumstances where they are caught between their desires and their duty. And I was also heavily inspired by Tolstoy and Anna Karenina, and her conflict between moral duty and her passions. And I was heavily inspired by A Tale of Two Cities, and the idea of revolution, of the idea where good intentions can go wrong, because what you have here is a situation where the character of Catherine um, falls in love with Edward Compton, who is a man who works for her husband, industrialist husband, during the Revolution. And so she's torn between that. Their love progresses, but at the same time, you have a man named Bertrand Shaw, who is a philosopher who leads a revolution against the town, um, to against the capitalists, who he believes are oppressive. But once they take control, they realize that they really have no moral foundation for their philosophies, and they all end up turning on each other. And that's all I'll say about that. And then you have Catherine, who wants to make the ultimate sacrifice for the man she loves. And so it's there's a lot of there's themes of religion. What role does religion play in society? Um, And is religion a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is capitalism good? Is it bad? Um, do we need to overhaul everything? Should we have a various mixture of different kinds of systems? Um, that there's a, the ecstasy and the ignominy does not give you answers. It doesn't say the capitalists are good or bad. It doesn't say the communists are good or bad. You're left to make up your own mind. Should Catherine stay loyal to her husband? Should she be liberated and cast off more rigid moral constraints and be with the man she loves? These are questions that the story leaves you with. It doesn't answer them. Um, I am not trying to proselytize here. I'm trying to channel a story to display it honestly, and then you can make up your own mind. So now I will read to you the first paragraph of The Ecstasy and the Ignominy. Chapter 1, The Dawn, Catherine's Narrative. Love does not wait for time to dream. It is too fragile of an art. It sails on the shattered hopes of poets and gods, a pageantry unseen and a story untold. In the end, a type of silence emerges that transcends thought and memory. It is the emptiness we feel when the Promethean spark of nature goes out, and the world becomes cold and mirthless. Passion withers into a forgotten harmony, and nothing, not even the angels above, can make the music play again. For beauty has fallen from heaven, and we are alone in the mist, which I think is a very somber opening, and it really sets the mood for what is to come, this foreboding revolution. And so, yeah, The Ecstasy and the Ignominy, I think, is one of my greatest works. And of course, the term ecstasy means passion, ignominy means moral shame. Um, for anyone who doesn't know what it means, that you are grappling with your imperfect morality and feeling shameful of the stains on your soul, and it's about how pride and regret, when harmonized together, can create a kind of moral shame. So that's what the term ignominy means, because a lot of people don't know what that means. So I thought I would clear that up. Um, but again, the ecstasy and the ignominy. This is what the in the cover here you can see the mountains, and of course the noose, which is used for executions. Um, I really like this cover because it reminds me of a Penguin Classics cover, which is what I was going for. So this is probably, I would say, my greatest work so far. Of course, now I'm working on The Disappearance of Richard Blackwood, which is a story set during Puritan New England. It's a Gothic mystery story, but that is a tale for another day. I'm only about 20 chapters into it, but and it might maybe end up being 50 or 60 chapters. Who knows? So it's going to be a while before that's finished. Even though I'm working on it um, every day, at least a little, and but because I am a poetic literary writer, and I love writing poetically, these things take time. So the disappearance of Richard Blackwood might not come out for another year, perhaps even 2 years. Who knows? But these are all of the books that I currently have available. Hopefully, you have learned something about all of them, and thank you for listening.